Have you ever looked at your parents, your grandparents, and quietly wondered whether your future was already written long before you were born? I asked myself that question many times in my life. I am 94 years old now, and I have buried friends who were stronger than me, richer than me, and in many cases, genetically luckier than me. Men who came from families that lived long, and yet they themselves did not. And I have also watched others, men born into illness, weakness, and short life expectancy, outlive every prediction placed on them. For a long time, I believed the story most people believe, that genes were the final judge, that whatever ran in your blood would eventually catch up with you, that if heart disease, diabetes, or frailty lived in your family, then it would one day live in you too. That belief is comforting in a strange way, because it removes responsibility. It tells you the outcome is inevitable. But life did not confirm that story for me. Experience corrected it. What I learned, slowly, sometimes painfully, is that genes are not commanders. They are suggestions. They whisper possibilities, not verdicts. They may load the gun, yes, but they do not decide when or whether it fires. Day after day, year after year, it was not my ancestry that shaped my health most. It was my behavior. What I ate when no one was watching. How I moved when I felt tired. Whether I slept, rested, breathed deeply, or drowned myself in stress and bitterness. Whether I smoked because others did, or stopped because my body asked me to listen. I am not here to tell you that genes don't matter. They do. But I am here at 94, still standing to tell you this with certainty. My lifestyle shaped my health far more than my genetics ever did. And once I understood that, everything changed. When people hear the word genes, they imagine something fixed, unmovable, almost sacred, as if the moment you are born, a silent judge stamps your fate and seals it. I believed that once. At 94, I can tell you that belief survives mostly among people who have not watched life closely enough. Genes are instructions, not outcomes. They describe tendencies, not certainties. They outline what could happen under certain conditions, not what must happen regardless of circumstance. That distinction is everything. I was born into a family where illness was common. Heart problems, high blood pressure, weakness in old age. It was all there. If genes were rulers, I should have followed the same path on schedule. Doctors warned me early. Friends reminded me often. It runs in your family, they said, as if the sentence had already been passed. But something strange happened as the years went on. Men with good genes fell apart while others with terrible genetic cards endured. I watched patterns repeat themselves until they were impossible to ignore. The strongest predictor of who aged well was not family history. It was daily behavior. Let me be precise about what I mean by lifestyle, because vague language is where truth goes to die. Lifestyle is not a slogan. It is the sum of thousands of small decisions repeated long enough to matter. What you eat consistently, not occasionally. How often you move your body, not whether you once belonged to a gym. Whether you sleep deeply or live in constant exhaustion. Whether you smoke, drink excessively, carry unmanaged stress, isolate yourself, or stay socially engaged. Whether your days are governed by routine and moderation or chaos and excess. Genes cannot force you to smoke. Genes cannot force you to sit still for decades. Genes cannot force you to sleep 4 hours a night or eat processed food until your body revolts. Genes respond to environments. They do not create them. I learned something crucial in my later years. Genes express themselves only when conditions invite them to. A predisposition is not a disease. It is an open door that may remain closed if you never walk toward it. People often misunderstand this and swing too far in the opposite direction. They say, so genes don't matter at all. That is also wrong. Genes matter, but they are not dominant. They are reactive. They wait. Think of it this way. Genetics provide the blueprint. Lifestyle decides whether the building is maintained or neglected, reinforced, or slowly allowed to collapse. Two people can have the same blueprint and end up with entirely different structures depending on how they live inside it. I have seen men inherit risk for heart disease and never develop it because they walked daily, ate simply, managed stress, and slept well. I have seen men with no known genetic risk destroy their bodies through excess, inactivity, and constant strain. If genes were the primary force, this would not happen so consistently. Another uncomfortable truth. Blaming genes is often a way to escape responsibility. It feels safer to believe that decline is inevitable than to accept that our habits are shaping us in real time. Responsibility is heavy. Fate is light. But only one of them tells the truth. There were years when I could have chosen differently. I could have eaten poorly because I was tired. I could have ignored movement because I was busy. I could have drowned stress in distraction instead of discipline. Each time I didn't, I was not defying my genes. I was simply refusing to feed the conditions that allow weakness to grow. This is where many conversations go wrong. People ask, which matters more, genes or lifestyle? The answer is not philosophical. It is practical. Genes set probabilities. Lifestyle determines exposure. Over decades, exposure outweighs probability. Health is not built in dramatic moments. It is built quietly, invisibly, in the ordinary days no one applauds. Genes do not attend those days. Your habits do. Let me be clear about boundaries because honesty demands it. Lifestyle does not guarantee immunity. It does not promise perfect health or infinite life. Anyone who claims that is lying. But lifestyle dramatically shifts odds. It delays onset. It reduces severity. It extends function. It preserves independence. And those differences compound year after year. At 94, I'm not here because my genes were exceptional. I am here because I treated my body as something responsive, not doomed. I listened early, I adjusted often, I respected limits, and I stayed consistent long after enthusiasm faded. Genes may load the gun, but lifestyle decides whether your finger ever touches the trigger and how often. And once you understand that, fear gives way to responsibility. Responsibility gives way to power, and power, applied patiently, changes outcomes that once seemed inevitable. In the next part, I will tell you exactly how lifestyle overrides genetic risk over time, not in theory, but in lived reality. By the time a man reaches my age, patterns become impossible to ignore. Not theories, not opinions, patterns. And the clearest pattern I have witnessed is this. Time magnifies behavior far more than inheritance. Genes act quietly, lifestyle acts daily, and daily actions, when repeated for decades, become louder than any genetic whisper. Most people misunderstand how decline actually happens. They imagine it as a sudden collapse. One diagnosis, one bad test result, one unlucky year. That is not how it works. Decline is usually the final chapter of a very long story written in small, forgettable sentences, a little less movement each year, slightly poorer sleep, slightly more stress carried without release, slightly worse food chosen because it is convenient, none of it dramatic, all of it cumulative. Genes do not accelerate that process. Habits do. I noticed something important in my 50s and 60s. Men my age began to separate, not by wealth, not by intelligence, not even by medical history, but by function. Some moved easily, others stiffened, some recovered quickly from illness, others never quite did. When you traced their lives backward, the explanation was rarely genetic. It was behavioral. The body adapts to what it repeatedly experiences. If you sit, it adapts to sitting. If you move, it adapts to movement. If you live under constant stress, your systems recalibrate around stress. If you rest, recover, and regulate, your body learns resilience. Genes respond to these signals. They do not resist them. People often ask why lifestyle beats genetics. The answer is simple. Genes do not act alone. They require activation. They require reinforcement. They require the right conditions. Lifestyle supplies those conditions or withholds them. Over time, this becomes decisive. A genetic risk that is never fed stays quiet. A small risk repeatedly fed grows loud. Meanwhile, even a strong genetic advantage can be squandered through neglect. I have lived long enough to see men outrun their father's illnesses, not by fighting them, but by refusing to recreate the same conditions. They ate differently. They handled stress differently. They moved when their fathers rested. They slept when their fathers worked themselves thin. They aged into entirely different outcomes despite shared blood. This is why short-term thinking ruins health conversations. People want immediate proof, immediate rewards, immediate certainty. But lifestyle does not work on that timeline. It works on a longer curve where patience beats intensity and consistency beats effort. There were seasons in my life when nothing seemed to change. I walked, ate simply, slept properly, and felt no dramatic improvement. If I had been chasing motivation, I would have quit. But I wasn't chasing feelings. I was shaping conditions, and conditions take time to reveal their power. Eventually, the difference showed itself, not in perfection, but in preservation. I stayed functional while others declined. I recovered while others lingered. I remained independent while others surrendered autonomy. Those outcomes did not appear suddenly. They arrived quietly, like interest compounding. Another truth people avoid. Lifestyle choices interact with each other. Poor sleep worsens stress. Stress worsens eating. Eating worsens energy. Low energy reduces movement. Reduced movement worsens sleep. Genetics do not create these loops. Behavior does. And once a loop forms, it accelerates decline faster than any inherited trait. The opposite is also true. Better sleep improves stress tolerance. Movement improves sleep. Simple food stabilizes energy. Stable energy supports consistency. Over time, these loops protect the body. Genes benefit from supportive environments just as they suffer in hostile ones. This is why slogans fail, but structure works. Health is not willpower, it is systems. It is routines. It is environments you build so that good choices become easier than bad ones. Genetics do not fight systems, they adapt to them. Let me draw a clear boundary again, because integrity matters. Lifestyle does not make you invincible. Accidents happen. Illness can arrive unexpectedly. Aging still occurs. But lifestyle decides how early, how severe, and how limiting those outcomes become. That difference is not trivial. It is the difference between years lived and years endured. At 94, I do not measure health by numbers on a chart. I measure it by capability. Can I move? Can I think clearly? Can I live without constant dependence? Those are the outcomes lifestyle protects most reliably, and genetics alone cannot secure. Many men wait too long because they believe the window has closed. That is another lie genetics tells when misunderstood. The body responds at any age. Adaptation slows, but it does not disappear. Conditions still matter. Signals still matter. Choices still matter. Lifestyle is not about reversing time. It is about changing trajectory, and trajectory matters even late in life. I am not exceptional. I am consistent, and consistency, applied long enough, outweighs inheritance more often than people are willing to admit. In the final part, I will tell you what this understanding gave me, not just in years, but in peace, and why it is never too late to change the direction you are heading. When you reach 94, you stop arguing with theories and start listening only to what has proven itself. What proved itself to me over a lifetime of watching men age, weaken, endure, and sometimes surprise everyone is this simple truth. Health responds to how you live far more than to what you inherit. This understanding did not give me immortality. It did not promise safety from every illness or spare me from loss. What it gave me was something far more valuable: agency. The knowledge that my future was not sealed by my past, that my body was not a passive victim of bloodlines, but an active participant responding to the signals I sent it every day. Once I understood that, fear loosened its grip. I stopped asking what ran in my family and started asking what I was reinforcing in myself. I stopped chasing shortcuts and committed to ordinary discipline. I stopped waiting for motivation and built routines that carried me forward even when enthusiasm disappeared. I did not live perfectly. I lived attentively. I adjusted when my body warned me. I respected limits without surrendering to them. I chose consistency over intensity and patience over panic. And over time, those choices accumulated into resilience. If there is one thing I want you to hear from a 94-year-old man who has walked this road, it is this. It is rarely too late to change the conditions that shape your health. Genetics may influence where you begin, but lifestyle determines where you arrive. Your body is listening. It always has been. What you do next will matter more than what came before. That is not hope. That is experience.